Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Indie Lens pop-up. My name is Hannah Gibbons, and I am the Special Events and Community Engagement Coordinator at Maryland Public Television. Thanks to an ongoing public media partnership with PBS's Independent Lens, we've screened 4 powerful films so far in this season of Indie Lens pop-up. You may have caught Storming Caesar's Palace, Free Chol Soo Lee, or Love in the Time of Fentanyl. All of these films by independent filmmakers from across the country address some of the most important issues of our time and provide a richer understanding of society today. We are proud to introduce today's short films from the Independent Lens Bridge Builders Collective, brought to us by filmmakers Zach Manuel and Lauren G. Cargo. The Collective is a series of short films exploring the important work of 5 individuals and organizations working toward meaningful change and bridging critical gaps in their communities as it relates to the American legal system and reforming. Be sure to stick around following the screening, as we will be joined by a small group of Maryland area bridge builders who are actively working toward that meaningful change in their local communities. So without further ado, here is the Bridge Builders Collective. Let's watch and learn together.
Hi, my name is Zach Manuel. I'm a filmmaker from New Orleans, Louisiana, and the co-creator and cinematographer for the Bridge Builders Short Film Collective.
Hi, my name is Lauren Cargo, and I'm an independent producer based in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I produce the Bridge Builders Short Film Collective. We're glad you're here, and thank you for taking the time to watch these films. The purpose of this series is not just to celebrate and share the work of our collaborators that you see on screen, but to start a dialogue around justice work and equity in this country.
These problems can seem lofty and untouchable, but the purpose of this series is to break down the barriers of what it means to engage with reform work and activism and show a road by which you can support work that's happening on the ground in your own community.
You don't have to be a lawyer or have any previous experience with activism or organizing to engage with reform. As filmmakers, when we started working on this series, we looked around us to see what inequities folks are really facing and considered the people in our communities to be the experts of those issues.
We started with a couple guiding questions. What old policies and procedures need to change? What does positive change look like? What is the power of the individual? And how is the responsibility of the work shared throughout a community?
There are bridge builders in every community that deserve to be seen and celebrated.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope that these films can inspire dialogue and change in your community too.
For many Southeast Asian refugees, we end up entangled in the immigration system. After serving 16 years, I was arrested by ICE on my first day of freedom. Although I was born in a Thailand refugee camp, Thailand does not recognize people of Cambodian origin as Thai citizens. So essentially they were going to send me back to a country I've never set foot in. I was born into violence as a child of refugee whose family already experienced traumas from war, and that's carried on to me. We need to ask the question, how do we support survivors? We're not for mass incarceration, we're not for policing, we're for transformative justice, right, to a holistic approach, because as we know historically, what incarceration does, right, in terms of people of color, in terms of the impact that it has on our community. And the Asian Prison Support Committee is an organization working to end mass incarceration and detention and deportation of our communities. Community activism, organizing is a form of collective healing. That's how we build power. That's how we heal each other. Then you're going to raise both of your arms up high. You're going to do a big inhale, then exhale slowly.
Let's just do that.
The power that we possess is really in our relationships with each other. I feel we are really tied to each other. My relationship with APSC started actually when I was in ICE detention. They wrote me, they came to my immigration hearings, and they also helped support it with my bond relief. But I realized my situation was not unique.
I was sitting there waiting, and there's other people paroling. They're on one side. I'm in the ice tank, so I'm waiting for ice. They opened the doors like, hey, let's go. I was like, where I'm going? He's like, you're going to the bus station. I was like, man, I'm thinking I'm hallucinating. Am I hearing this right? I'm going to the bus station. He's like, you're going to the bus station. I was like, all right. And once I walk outside and I saw a CDC van instead of an ICE van,
I remember just being in tears, knowing that that we actually won. Right?
Yeah.
That we won your freedom in a way because we worked so hard, especially when we were at San Quentin the days before, right?
Yeah.
We were at San Quentin doing the rally.
Living under ICE detention for so long, because I knew I had a warrant since I started my term 23 years ago. And having that moment, I was like, how lucky am I? Other folks behind me deserve the same thing.
Yeah.
They all want it here in our community and not deported. So yeah. That's the love.
Anyone who has served their time, they should not be subject to double punishment of detention and deportation just because of their legal status. Thank you so much, Ron. Okay. Good morning. Are we ready? Yes, we are. Ready? Anyone's healing, anybody's growth, anybody's transformation, anybody's success is really not isolated. We really have to work together. 3, 2, 1. I think as humans, we cannot do it alone. I know I couldn't.
Our community's getting stronger. We're building power. This is what it means to be in community with folks out here.
Knowing that having people that loved for me, that care for me, my community that supported me, it really has transformed my life. For people like myself who wear many identities or come from backgrounds that's very complex, right? I am a 1.5 generation Cambodian American woman. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I'm a proud Khmer daughter of a genocide refugee survivor. That's how I identify myself.
Having a criminal legal record prevents you from doing pretty much anything in life. It prevents you from getting a job, it can prevent you from housing, from licensing, from education. Hey, good, how are you? I myself am system impacted. I have a criminal record. Oftentimes when you're told that you're less than, and you're told it repeatedly, you start to believe it. I want to change how the game is played. Texas Appleseed is a nonprofit that works on social justice and economic reform. Our project is pursuing a piece of reform right now that would lead to more Texans not having, should I say, a criminal record associated with them. And this process should be easier than what it currently is. Just the sheer complication of the process has made getting data on the amount of people who qualify for this very difficult. System-impacted individuals should be leading the charge, and I'm the one that should be standing behind them, giving them the research. How are we ever supposed to know what their experiences are if we never include their voice?
What's up, girl?
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I brought some tacos. I don't know what your bag is.
If I didn't get treatment when I first got into prison, the rest of my time was survival mode. And for me, my rehabilitation came when I wanted change.
Right.
I wanted change when the stuff had gotten so bad, I had nothing left. And I'm telling you from experience, you want these people to come out and make the community safe, right? But you're entrusting these people who are going to dehumanize them and then send them back out into the world.
Very much so.
So how are we making anybody safe?
We're not. All right, girl.
Bye.
Bye again. Oh, mama. Thanks. Drive safe, yeah?
Yeah.
In order to be successful in the work that I do, I have to be able to navigate those right-leaning, more conservative spaces. And by the way, I have a PhD, and I'm constantly code switching.
As the day of the Brown decision. But as students of social science, it is your job to push the envelope and tear apart the data collection process and the amount of power that prosecutors have, right? Based on, hey, look at the late stragglers, look at them, 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 look at them.
Less than 1% of PhD holders are Latinas. It is very important that women of color see that they can do this. I want my students to think critically. I want them to ask questions. I want them to say, if this is the standard, who put that standard in place? Is it someone that looks like me? As someone who was born and raised on the border, you can take the girl out the barrio, but you can't take the barrio out the girl. If you hear me in certain spaces, I sound and speak one way. I have the chola prolonging A's and the little accent, and it comes out more, and I talk faster.
It's pretty.
A big part of why I'm even with Sarah, my wife, is because she provides and offers a safe space.
I don't know how she goes in and talks to legislators. She's able to switch and be really strategic about how she communicates that.
The people who are impacted by these policies matter. It's very important to empower people to claim their story. This is who I am. This is the role that you, the system, you, the government, you, policymakers, played in the challenges that I faced. If I need to get a legislator to know me first as a code is switched, then fine. But the second that I bring them in, they're gonna get to know me. Ultimately, I'm just seeking to give a voice to the voiceless.
Where harshness rules. You show compassion, man. You sit out like a sore thumb. It's like a rose growing out of concrete. The day I step out the prison, I decided that we just can't let it go on and go on. Somebody got to stand and break the cycle. I'm on Esplanade and Dauphine. Come back around and come up on Esplanade. If you're in a hole and you're looking out for help, a guy may pass by with a rope and drop a rope down. But if the rope not long enough, it's not reaching you. But here come a guy like myself and jump down in the hole. And the guy look at me and say, man, are you crazy? Why you jump down in here? Proud of you, man. Proud of you. And I just tell him to trust me and follow me because I've been here before and I know the way out.
I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know, he's not answering.
We come too far, he done got his diploma.
That's what I understand, why he done got lost like that.
Let me see if I can reach him at another number.
Okay.
So it came out to be something bad turned into something positive. And if they can't own up to their mistakes and be changed for the better so y'all both can grow, you gotta go. You gotta grow.
The Faith Planet is a place that provides transitional health care for people recently coming out of prison. They're trying to get back into society. First thing we want to do is find out what type of health care do they need and try to provide that type of health care. Right now, you taking medication for your diabetes?
No. When I left, they didn't give me anything. They just rolled me out the door.
We basically ask them the type of medication they're taking. If so, hey, Doc, do they have Medicare? I have a guy over here with me, he needs some medication. Could we provide that?
Okay.
No, it didn't swell up on me before, but it wasn't this bad.
So what we want to get to see a doctor to find out exactly what's wrong. They'll tell you what to do. We want to see people healthy.
What's your name?
Miles, down.
Show them where they can go to get help. Take them where they can go to get help. We navigate.
Okay.
Checking in?
Yes, I'm bringing Mr. Miles over here to get a checkup.
God, okay. Sister.
Coming out of prison, most guys are not trusting of doctors. Now you're not seen as a human being, you're a number. If they didn't like you, you may never get seen by a doctor.
It was a tragic living in that environment with that type of health care because it wasn't.
Well, that's just it. See, you say health care but you're dealing with people who didn't care.
Right, exactly.
So it wasn't health care.
It was.
It's not, I don't care.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And man, I seen a lot of guys perish as a result of that.
Doc, this is Darryl Miles. And even if you saw a doctor, you may not have gotten the attention you needed. So you don't know if you're well or you're sick. In the institution, there was many occasions like that. I had to step forward because no one else would do it. People had become so intimidated by the forces that be that they wouldn't stand against it. It was a tough environment, man. So how it go, D?
Man, it was beautiful, man.
I know that. And that's what's important, a line of communication, showing compassion, showing that person that you are concerned about him or her as an individual. Because a person don't care what you know if you don't care about them.
You know what I'm saying? So, man, every day is
That's what it takes sometimes.
Every last one of them, bro.
Every day is a blessing.
Every step I take.
Tell me you love me. It's one thing. But if you show me you love me, then that's another thing.
You gotta dig in you. I'll try to reach back for as many as I can reach. I got big arms.
It is alleged that a male white officer struck the victim on the side of the body several times. The reporting party also alleged the accused grabbed her and her daughter's arm and pushed them out of the office. The reporting party alleged called her a bitch and a slut. It is alleged finding is unfounded. Conclusion not sustained, unfounded. There are so many. I despise this. There are whole families who have literally been fractured because of policing. There might be some shame associated with what happened. You might even internalize that and believe it's your fault. That feeling of isolation is very dangerous.
Say her name. The family girl. Safety. Now.
Beneath the Surface is a project that utilizes narrative justice and data science to investigate gender-based violence at the hands of the Chicago Police Department. We interrogate these patterns as a means of opening up the space for other folks to come forward. My career aspiration is to be a hood data scientist, TBH. I shouldn't say that, huh?
No, that's you. That's good.
That's for real. I'm like, how do we use our data to handle our business, to understand what's happening here? When you have a negative encounter with police, it's a very shocking thing. It's very jarring. Especially if that encounter happened in the midst of your own personal crisis. And there's a range of representation within the complaint data. The tidy category used to describe the record's flattened and already limited database that only included a single action, even if multiple violations occurred. We have been able to engage over 200 volunteers and generate training data so that we can parse through over 27,000 complaints. We were attempting to do machine learning, but with our brains. In the over 247,000 allegations that are in there, over 90% of the time, the complaints are unsustained. Then there's a small portion of them that are actually disciplined, even when a case is sustained. I am tired. This work has taken a toll on my body. It makes me sad. Sometimes it gives me nightmares. It makes me very afraid. I have a little niece who, statistically speaking, is more likely to experience various forms of violence. Black women and girls are left out of these important conversations. So one of the Black women impacted by this was Diane Bond. She was sexually violated and they just really destroyed her home. She filed a complaint with the city of Chicago. And then a few weeks later, they came back, right? And they assaulted her again, this time, again, forcing themselves into her home. It's my firm belief that we need a more localized way of collecting data on people's lived experiences so that we can ensure that their testimony is whole and intact and that there is some truly independent representative and making it accessible to the public. Yes. Before we did this project, we would not be able to come up with any statistics about people who had filed complaints in response to how officers treated them after a sexual assault. The way that we make this information accessible to the community is not only through the site, but also through rigorous public discussions and community building, period. What BTS did was provide evidence for what community members have been saying anecdotally for quite some time. I imagine that reparations will occur. In my ideal world, public safety means people have their human rights met, at the very least, and that people have the space and opportunity to heal. Yeah.
The power of mutual aid is that direct connection. It's being directly involved with your community, with your neighborhood, and supporting people on a personal level.
The power of mutual aid is being able to buck the system and to be able to provide aid to people, no questions asked. Mutual aid is inherently political. It's inherently going against the established way of being in a community.
A lot of us, I think, feel let down by those administrations that are tasked with making decisions on a national, federal level. If they're not going to address these very real inequities, it's up to us.
My name is Jay.
Tom Kockelmacher.
My name is Lara Crombie.
I am one of the lead volunteers at
Community
Aid Network.
MN.
We're a mutual aid group that started in South Minneapolis.
That can start being brought out.
We're just a group of people who cares about supporting our community members with free groceries, free diapers, everything for a dignified living.
Having to prove how poor you are is really demoralizing. And unfortunately, for a lot of nonprofits, that's a requirement. We were from the get-go adamant that we would not be doing any of that.
We're not a nonprofit. We rely on pretty much 100% individual donations.
If you're almost done, I can just be ready to run it out.
Not everyone might be able to come on site due to various limitations or obstacles.
Hi, this is Audrey with Canna Men. Just calling to let you know that your delivery is here on your front porch. Have a great night.
I think that mutual aid is kind of the economic driver behind justice work in a sense.
We want solutions, say it. We want solutions. We want solutions.
We started right when George Floyd got murdered.
After the uprising, all these businesses stayed closed, and all these groups said, well, we're not going to come into your neighborhood anymore because we don't trust your neighborhood or we don't think it's safe.
George Floyd being murdered by the police showed people that they're so much more connected to their neighbors than they are to the cops or to like city government. We're the only people that can help ourselves.
We can do it. We can step up.
The power of mutual aid is the people.
We were doing these kinds of runs. Early in the day, we'd get a bunch of stuff, come back down, distribute it to different mutual aid sites, and then we would take a break for like 2 hours and then go to a protest to Medic.
We grew out of what was happening in the city and saw how people were being affected and what they were losing in their lives, and that there was this bigger need that was becoming more and more apparent.
There's a whole subset of the population that really just literally can't afford to engage in politics because they are having to focus on just meeting their basic needs.
There are, I guess, some challenges. It really goes up and down in terms of the finances that are coming in from the individual donations. There have been some pretty sparse weeks. This isn't over. I think, unfortunately, every time there's a tragedy, it's kind of when everyone is sort of pushed to do something. It's like people wake up in the quiet times, that always kind of dwindles, although that need never goes away.
We're pretty secure in that we're all really committed to the work. Even if one of us leaves, like there's other people to take their place.
We use the expression solidarity, not charity. I have something that I can share. Maybe you have something that you can share. If you need something, we will try to give it to you. The ultimate goal is that we can take care of each other.
I hope you all enjoyed the collection of short films and that you were inspired by the bridge builders and their stories. Before we get started with the discussion portion of the night, I will invite each of our bridge builders to introduce themselves, their organization, what resources they provide to their community, and to connect their story to that of the bridge builders that we just met in the collective. First up, Kiana Johnson with Life After Release.
Hey everyone, Kiana Johnson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am the founder and executive director of Life After Release. It's an organization that is based in Prince George's County, Maryland, and is ran by formerly incarcerated women. We provide support to folks who are formerly incarcerated, who are re-entering into their communities. We also empower by teaching folks how to manage life after release. Through organizing and also shaping legislation and policy. Our work is key in reducing recidivism and reforming the criminal legal system and ending mass incarceration throughout the state of Maryland. And I'm really happy to be here. The film really, really resonated with me. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Kiana. Next up, I'd like to introduce Vanessa Bright with Maryland Reentry Resource Center.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Bright. I'm the founder and executive director of Maryland Reentry Resource Center. We provide support services to formerly incarcerated individuals through case management, transitional employment. We also provide support to people that are currently incarcerated. We have a reentry workbook that we make available to them to help them get prepared for release so that they can be successful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vanessa. And last, but certainly not least, Molly Gill, here to tell us more about the work she does with FAM.
Hello, I'm Molly Gill. I'm FAM's Vice President of Policy. FAM is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We were started in 1991 by a woman who had a family member get a 5-year mandatory minimum prison sentence for growing marijuana, and realized that many, many people in this country are getting mandatory sentences where the judge has no flexibility to look at the facts of the case or the individual person and their needs. And because she believes so strongly that we shouldn't have one size fits all justice, she started FAM. So FAM is not a direct services provider, although we are extremely grateful for organizations like the others here tonight that are. But we are a policy organization. So we do advocacy at the state and federal level and legislatures to try to change sentencing laws and improve accountability and transparency in prisons while people are incarcerated, so that hopefully they have a better incarceration experience and can come home and have a better reentry.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much. Really looking forward to our conversation tonight. So I want to start off with a question. In Boundless, Jennifer, the subject of that film, she had a very powerful line where she said, "The people who are impacted by these policies matter." So Kiana, I'd love to start with you with this question. Why might it be important for system-impacted individuals to really be leading the charge and become involved in developing and changing policies?
Nothing for us without us is what I often tell folks. While we respect allies, while we welcome allies and our comrades to help us with the fight, to fight alongside us, it is a dangerous place to try to speak for us or to try to lead the charge because as a formerly incarcerated woman, what I know is the intentions may be well, but some of the consequences that are unintended, that are harmful to our community of formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated folks. So what I often tell folks is that it's probably best to invest in the leadership of directly impacted, formerly incarcerated folks than to try to take on the charge and do it without us, because the consequences can be dire to us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Vanessa, Molly, do you have any thoughts on that question?
Well, we are a direct services provider, but we do like to include our program participants in helping us shape the way that we do deliver services. So we definitely try to get their input as how can we best help you, what programs can best help you, what things do you need, and how can we empower you to be successful.
FAM uses the stories of impacted people in our advocacy, and we have from day one. It's one of the things that actually made us a little bit unique when we started working in the advocacy world, because no one was sharing the stories of impacted people. So if you go to our website, fam.org, and click on the stories tab, you'll see literally hundreds of stories of people who are in prison now, who have left prison, stories from their family members. And the reason that I think it's so important to involve impacted people is that, I mean, Kiana's right, they're closest to the problem, they're closest to the solutions, but also their stories are just so much more powerful than me, who has never been to prison, walking into a senator's office and saying, these laws are really unfair, you should change them. It's more powerful for a senator to hear from someone who has lived that sentence, who has experienced what it's like to lose a loved one. And in fact, next week, we're bringing 65 people from across the country to Washington, D.C. to go talk to members of Congress about several bills that they're considering right now that would impact thousands of people in federal prisons in this country. And we're doing that because their stories matter and they're very powerful.
Absolutely. Now, on the subject of laws and making those laws, do the people who make these laws look like the people who are impacted by those laws? If not, what are some of the implications of that? I'd love to open it up to anybody that has feedback on that question.
Well, I'll speak. I mean, because I work with lawmakers all the time, and no, they don't look like the people who are by and large going to prison. Most legislatures are very white. The people who are elected to those positions tend to be very wealthy and come from very privileged backgrounds. It's not always the case, but a lot of times it is. These are lawmakers who may not personally have been impacted by incarceration themselves. Although increasingly, as America has become the world's largest jailer, we are seeing more and more people having direct experience with incarceration. They have a friend, they have a loved one, they have a cousin, they have a brother, they have someone who has gone to prison or spent some time in jail, or they have someone working in that system too, because it is a giant sprawling system that employs tens of thousands of people. So, but by and large, no, lawmakers don't have this experience.
And I just want to piggyback on what Molly said. And it's not just about people looking like the folks that are impacted. It's understanding the experience of the individual. So most lawmakers have no idea what it's like to be in poverty, what it's like to struggle, what it's like to just, try to survive in a society where a lot of things are stacked against you being successful.
Well, I want to just point out that I grew up, and I was incarcerated in Prince George's County, Maryland, and all my lawmakers look like me. And so what I want to say to that point is we're talking about a system of capitalism. We're talking about a system of oppression. We're talking about a system that was built to oppress and to incarcerate and to lock up in Black people, right? So regardless of whether or not the lawmaker looks like me, from a person who lives in Prince George's County, who was incarcerated in Prince George's County, where my prosecutor is Black, where my police chief is Black, where all of my council members are Black, my senators are Black, and so forth. We still have a very high number of incarceration. Why is that? That's because the laws itself have been rooted in the system being the way that it is. And so that is why I, as an abolitionist, understand that it doesn't really matter what you look like. It is the system in and of itself that is designed to capture and incarcerate Black people.
Absolutely. Now, going beyond incarceration, for people that go re-enter into the world with a criminal legal record, there's countless impacts that can have on their life and moving forward. So perhaps, Vanessa, you could shed some light on policies in Maryland that can help formerly incarcerated people to, with the barriers that they face.
So I'll start with one that I think is very simple, but it doesn't happen. And to my understanding, there's supposed to be a law on the books. People leave without identification. So they don't have a state ID, they don't have their birth certificate, they don't have a social security card. And so all these are things that you need to get a job, to access benefits, to open a bank account. And so there's a lot of time wasted spent on trying to get something that, to me, the state should be able to do very easily. Take the prison ID, convert it to a state ID that could be used. So we spend a lot of time there. There are other barriers like transportation, housing, access to mental health services. A lot of people think that, all we need to do is get somebody a job, but there's a lot of other things that need to be dealt with before you can get anybody, even ready to hold down a job. So if there was a consistent way in the prison system where people were getting the reentry services that they needed to prepare to come home, and it was the same from institution to institution, as opposed to, one institution might give some services, 30 days out, somebody else might do it 2 weeks. If it was something consistent across the state, then people would be better prepared when they return home.
Absolutely. Kiana or Molly, do you have anything to add? Okay. Well, one of the major issues that was also touched on in our shorts, which is extremely complex, is healthcare. Healthcare should be a basic human right throughout all stages of life. However, we have seen that there are several resource gaps associated with medical and mental health services for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. So Molly, maybe you could expand upon some of those barriers to proper health care that exist for those individuals who are currently incarcerated.
Sure. I think a lot of people may be aware that most prisons are not built close to major urban centers. We locate them out in the middle of nowhere. And the nearest large hospital with a lot of specialists and surgeons and different disciplines represented could be hours and hours away. And that makes it very difficult for people to get the medical care that they need in prison. And prison medical care is appallingly bad. I have spoken to so many people who are heading to prison and their biggest fear is not getting assaulted, or experiencing some kind of traumatic sexual assault. Their biggest fear is getting sick, because they've heard the stories about how people get so sick in prison and there's such poor medical care that they can't get the treatment that they need. In the federal prison system for the longest time, I'm not sure if it's still true now, there was a 2-year waiting period to have a cavity filled. And what that would happen is people would literally get their teeth pulled because they couldn't get to the dentist on time. Their teeth would rot in their mouths and they would pull their teeth out. Now, think about that. You're coming home, you're going to a job interview, and you're missing 4 teeth. Right? Employers want someone who can smile, who can do customer service, who has a certain look and presentation. And that is something that's very small, but that can make it so much harder for people to come home and get employed. Also, we have an increasingly aging prison population. Our aging prison population is growing like wildfire. The next public health crisis in this country is going to be the aging prison population, because we don't have the resources and staff to care for them. They're growing out of control fast. Their needs are incredibly expensive. And that's why FAM advocates what's called compassionate release, trying to create mechanisms to get these aging and ill people out of prison into the community where they can get better care, where they can stay with their family if they've got a family who can care for them, and where those costs at the state level are offset by the federal government and Medicaid and Medicare. And so it's not just the state bearing this enormous cost all by itself. And it's also just the humane thing to do. People should not be dying in prison cells.
So I'd love to open this question up to Vanessa and Kiana in looking at formerly incarcerated people and what does, especially in Maryland, medical and mental health services look like for former incarcerated people and what they can receive upon reentry into their communities?
Well, mental health looks like solitary confinement.
Mm.
It looks like spending a lot of time in the hole, so to speak, for folks that know what that is. There's no room for any mental treatment. Once you are identified to have any type of mental conditions, or you are then placed in solitary confinement. There is a one size fit all. You may go to medical and you may see I don't even know if they're a therapist or not, but everybody gets put on the same medication. It's like a factory, right? There's no specialized care. There's no nothing that's going to fit one particular person. Also, for women in prison, we're talking about a whole different set of needs for women. We're talking about women giving birth in prison. We're talking about women not having hygiene products and using mattresses as tampons for 15 years, which causes ovarian cancer. And so we're talking about all the different things that link. And I think what's really important to understand is that when you are incarcerated, you're not a human being. Therefore, human rights don't apply to you, right? And that's why it's so hard to litigate, or it's so hard to actually advocate for any type of medical care, because you're considered property of the state, right? So when the Prisoners Litigation Act happened, it really just kind of put an end to people that are incarcerated being treated like human beings, because we're not. We are property of the state, and so therefore it doesn't matter what, as long as you're alive, that's what counts, right? And even if you die, because life after release, we've been actually researching the deaths in the jail. A lot of people are dying within 3 days of being detained inside of a detention center. So there's a lot of different things to actually factor into this. And the biggest one is that when you are incarcerated, you're not a human being, you're property, period.
That's very powerful. I'm interested to hear, especially from you, Kiana, about coming into the decision to use your power as an individual to work towards a positive change. When you decided that your experience, would lead you to starting this work and giving back to your community, what can you tell us about individual responsibility, and how should the responsibility of this work be shared throughout the community?
Oh, good. 'Cause I took notes during the during the actual film. And the first thing I'm going to say is, and I heard it on the film, I'm not sure what section it came from, but the power of the prosecutor is very, very important. I understand, and I know that when I was incarcerated, and I actually started my organization while I was incarcerated, and coming home and being able to do that, I understood how much power that the prosecutors had in all of this, right? And so actually being able to start my organization, and I think Vanessa said it earlier, I thought that all we need to do was give people a job, because when before I left for incarceration, I worked for the federal government, right, for 11 years, and I went in educated. So I went in with some privileges. And then coming home, I said, all we need to do is give people a job, right? Reentry, I was all on that. And then I realized quickly that that's not what this is. What we need is to build community. What we need is solidarity and not charity. I was so happy to actually hear that, and the power of community. Life after release may be slated as a C3, or whatever you want to call it, but we don't chart ourselves or pride ourselves of being a nonprofit organization. We really want to build our community. And I also heard in the film about Black women and girls being left out of the conversation, and that is why Life After Release is centering the actual, the incarceration, and how the incarceration of women have gone up 700% since the 80s, right? So there's a lot of things here that the film touched on and that I was able to pick up on, and just wanted to kind of like talk a little bit about. But Life After Release, again, is not is not your regular charitable organization. We are an organization that's here to build community, whatever that may look like, whether that looks like direct service, mutual aid. Because at first it wasn't cool to say direct service before the pandemic, right? It was like direct service organizations. We didn't get, the what we get now. But mutual aid is very, very important. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I'm interested to know if Vanessa, you also sort of have a similar experience in starting your organization from a direct experience in the justice system. So tell us a little bit more about how you decided to start your organization and how some of your services have evolved over the years.
So my direct experience was that I was a community educator. So I worked for the University of Maryland Extension Program, and I was hired to teach financial literacy in the community. And I found myself teaching in the community at a women's prison. And so as I got to know, the women in the prison, the men and women that came, through my classes, I felt like I wanted to be able to help them more than I was able to help them once a week, teaching a financial literacy class. In addition to that, because I was, working at the college level, I had to do research and write papers and all of those things. So the more I researched, the more I learned about mass incarceration of people of color, things like the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And I really learned so many things that I didn't know, because I went in with these, preconceived notions that, people in prison, they were getting an education and they were coming out and they were, able to, get their lives back. And then I realized that really wasn't the case. And so that's really what inspired me to create our agency. And really, we just want to empower people to make better decisions by giving them the knowledge to be able to make those better decisions, and just help to remove the barriers one by one so people can be successful when they come home.
Fantastic. And Molly, just for some final thoughts from you as well, your FAM is on the state and federal level. So what can you tell us about, the ins and outs or the nuances of working on both of those levels in policy reform?
Yeah, it's a little bit different because, Congress works in these 2-year blocks and they sort of work throughout that 2-year period. The Maryland state legislature meets for like 6 weeks. And so it's a sprint, it's a sprint versus a marathon. And so it's quite challenging to work in the state legislatures. You have to do a lot of work in the sort of off season, so that when, the legislature starts its work, we're ready to go. And I think what's exciting is that there are a lot of good ideas being considered in state legislatures. I think states have a sort of fiscal reality that the federal government doesn't have. We can just keep going into debt at the federal level, but if you're a state, you have to balance budget. Money doesn't fall out of the sky if you're Maryland. So, they have to think really seriously about, why does our prison population cost this much? In most states, their prison population is their second, third, fourth largest expenditure. Some states are paying more for prison than they are for education. And so state leaders, they're taking that pretty seriously and looking at, who can we let out and do that safely. And there has been a lot of progress in the last 35 years in, scaling some of these laws back. In the 1980s, we kind of went crazy and started incarcerating everybody. And all those chickens are coming home to roost now. And people are starting to realize we have to scale it back.
Thank you so much. So I would like to open up the floor to any of you ladies if you had some final thoughts to share or resources to share. No? Good.
Well, I think our website is in the chat.
Yes, we'll drop those again in the chat for you real quick. Okay.
And so we recently initiated a kind of drop-in service on Wednesdays at our office from 9 to 1. So if people are in need of reentry services, they can come, they can meet with a case manager, they can get help working on resumes and signing up for benefits and all those things in our office, which is in downtown Annapolis, 77 West Street, Suite 110.
Fantastic. Thank you. We did have one final question from the audience, and I'll open this up to see if any of you could answer it. I believe this came in during the mutual aid presentation. Can any of you speak to how a food program, mutual aid food program, might be funded and supported to the community?
Can you be a little more specific about that?
So Eileen asked, how is something like a food program funded?
Well, during the pandemic, there was the organization. The foundation is called If Now. They were the Consumer Health Foundation. They were actually funding mutual aid projects. Life After Release had a mutual aid project where we would get groceries out to folks and like masks and gloves and medicine and things like that to folks that we would get delivered to them. So there's different foundations and philanthropists that actually will fund those type of projects that I personally know of or have dealt with, but I don't know outside of that. And there, the one in the film actually talked about they were not funded at all. That was all 100% on donations. Also, I'm very close to Bread for the City in DC through my other hat that I have. Harriet's Wildest Dreams is another organization that I co-founded in DC, and we work very closely with Bread for the City. And their mutual aid program is really, really, and I don't think that's funded by any funder. It's just community-based.
And some organizations are growing, fresh produce and then redistributing it into the community. So that's another way to get started in your community.
Fantastic. The theme of community continues to come up. Well, a big special thank you to all of you who joined and stayed with us through the conversation. And I hope, again, that you were inspired by some of these very powerful stories. Also, a quick special thank you to our national partners, Independent Lens, ITVS, PBS, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, as well as our local partners that joined us tonight, Life After Release, Maryland Reentry Resource Center, and FAM. And as we've seen tonight, seemingly ordinary people can do extraordinary things. We just have to work together. So thanks again for tuning in. Good night to all of you.
Good night.
Good night.